Well, good evening and welcome to the Gold Goats and Guns 15 minutes here on YouTube. My name is Tom Luongo and we have a lot to talk about. As always, this will be short and sweet here on YouTube. And then we're going to move over to Odyssey in a little bit. So it's Tuesday. It's May 17th, 2022. Sorry I didn't do this last week. I literally looked up at like 10 to 10 and went, oh shit, I didn't do a live stream. And I know you're all terribly disappointed by that. And my schedule has just been so freaking crazy. I was like sitting on my back porch smoking a cigar going, what a day. But we're going to get into a couple of things here before we go forward. I know some questions are already showing up in the chat from some of the regulars. Just want everybody to know we'll be moving over to Odyssey in just a couple of minutes. I am going to put the link in the chat. There you go. If somebody wants to actually put that in as a comment below so that it shows up and then everybody can stop bitching at me, I don't care, whatever. Show up on Odyssey. If you can't find me on Odyssey, well, life's an intelligence test and you failed. So we'll just have to go there. FYI, this will be a double header or a triple header this evening, 15 minutes here on YouTube, an hour or so over on Odyssey, and then at 10:30 I'll be doing Halsey. Monday Money with Halsey for the first time in over a month. He's been busy and sick and a variety of other things. We just haven't been able to get anything done. So let's get started. I want to talk about Turkey. And I want to talk about this accession of Finland and Sweden into NATO, the situation surrounding the war in Ukraine, the escalation that we're beginning to see now as this thing stretches now into its third month. So, to be abundantly clear, everyone, it's very clear that the war that we're dealing with now was not all of a sudden sprang up out of a hole in the ground out of Putin's subconscious, and then he just attacked Ukraine willy-nilly. That's bullshit. That's a complete nonsensical lie promulgated by disgustingly vile people at 10 Downing Street, Brussels, and the White House. And then their media quislings. This thing was in preparation for years. The way the Ukrainians were prepped for this war has been coming for years. NATO has dumped billions and billions of dollars into Ukraine to get it ready for this moment where they were going to attack and try and expel not only the separatists in the Donbass, but then to retake Crimea as well. And Putin got there first. That's what they're really angry about. No argument about this. Now, whether or not the Russians have prosecuted this war to the best of their ability is up for certainly open debate at this point. I don't think anybody would even argue at this point. Hell, even Scott Ritter is saying, oh my God, maybe the Russians made a couple of mistakes here. But that's irrelevant because this thing was always going to get to this point. And the hardest part for a lot of people to wrap their heads around was that this was always going to get to this point. It was always going to wind up here. There are a variety of people who want this war for a variety of different reasons. I've tried to go over them in my writing and in my previous live streams and media appearances and whatnot to try and explain some of the nuances. And believe me, a lot of it is very complicated and some of it even feels self-contradictory because at this point there's a lot of people improvising. And when you on the battlefield, no war survives contact with the enemy. Well, same thing in geopolitics, folks. It's really difficult to, keep a coherent idea and strategy in your head and who maps to who and who's on what side and blah, 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 blah. Once the war starts, it starts to clarify who's in what faction. And at the same time, some people who were previously in one faction change sides. And as we move through the war, you're going to see people's reactions to the changing circumstances change as well. Everything is a chaotic dynamic system, and we can't be too locked into our perceptions of what we think, is this group's motivation versus that group's motivation versus everybody else's. And when thinking about that, specifically, let's talk about Turkey, because Turkey is, like Germany, the man in the middle. Now, Germany is the ultimate prize here. The US and the UK do not want Germany jumping ship and becoming nominally aligned in any way with the Russians. The Russians would love to cleave Germany away from from the West. And at the same time, Turkey has been the man in the middle for a while as a net energy importer, as a country with a massive net foreign debt, foreign currency debt obligation outstanding. They're very vulnerable to what they've been going through for the last 3 or 4 years with constant devaluation of the lira, now rampant, ridiculous and hyperinflation, everything, and the societal and detrimental societal effects thereof. At the same time, President Erdogan in Turkey has played a double-edged, he's played double, triple agent brilliantly at times, and at other times maddeningly frustrating. And so because of that, we're going to find out where this all leads to. Putin made this gambit into Ukraine. I know a lot of people are very uncomfortable with this kind of analysis, but Putin made this gambit in Ukraine to clarify the board. Okay, where are you? Where do you stand? We all talk about what, we like to be friends, or we'd like to do this, or we'd like to do that, but where the fuck do you stand? Because this is where we stand, right? And so Turkey is now in that position of having to decide where they stand, right? And I'm not getting macho about this or anything else. It's been my analysis, and it's been my intuition that I think Turkey is trying to worm their way out of NATO while not necessarily joining the CSTO or the SEO or any of the other Asian security architectures. I think Turkey really does. I think Erdogan really is trying to position Turkey as the man in the middle and effectively a neutral state that controls access to the Black Sea and then can still obtain favors from both sides. So Finland and Sweden both want to join NATO now. The Finn government the Finns have become some of the most openly belligerent people in Europe. They have the largest standing army in Europe by far. Both Finland and Sweden are ruled by WEF, World Economic Forum puppets. So it's clear that Davos wants them in NATO. Okay, that's what's being pushed here. But from what I can understand, having talked to some Finns and what I've seen of Finnish media, it's pretty clear that they all want to be part of NATO now, because they've also been turned rabidly anti-Russian by an inundation of Western media over the course of the last 25 years, creating phantom boogeymen in their heads, right? So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. For 25 years, you have Western media telling them, oh, the evil Russians are coming. We have to be worried about the evil Russians. And then they provoke the Russians and they poke them for 25 years, expand to their borders, do this, do all of these things, these endless provocations, and then go, see? And then when they finally have enough and say, okay, we're not moving back any farther, and we're going to preemptively attack before you attack us in Ukraine, they go, see? Russia's the evil bad guy. And it's, and everything is just pathetic and sad, but it is what it is. And it's pathetic and sad that, in many ways that we even have to discuss it in any terms other than that, because it's very clear what the situation has been for a long, long time. Because all of those provocations were, one, unnecessary, and two, immoral in every fucking way. Because the people who did this, who provoked this war, are now, one, dealing with things spiraling out of control that they can't control. And Germany, Italy, and France are now wondering whether or not they made the right choice. And Davos wondering whether they made the right choice here. And unleashing forces within the US and the UK, and even within Europe itself, which are, frankly, quite dangerous. So, I don't know, folks. So, looking at Turkey saying to NATO, ho, slow your roll, people. Slow your roll. You are not adding Finland and Sweden into NATO. You are not going to antagonize the Russians any further. And Erdogan has been under sincere sanctions. He's had a coup attempt against him and multiple currency attacks, multiple economic hitman style currency attacks on his country. while still nominally being a member of NATO. I mean, honestly, Erdogan's a member of NATO the same way that Viktor Orban and Hungary are members of the EU. They're there only to come up the works at this point and get as much as they can before they're either kicked out, which there really is no mechanism within NATO to officially try and kick somebody out, or they just leave. So now Erdogan has effectively veto power over Norway and Sweden's accession into NATO, and the intense negotiations have started, and everybody's thinking, well, the Turks will just fold here. And I just read an article on RT about what Turkey's list of demands are, apparently according to Bloomberg or Reuters, and at this point, unnamed sources say the Turks want this. Well, it's obvious what the Turks want, and to be honest with you, I don't even think that it's what is in that list of demands, which is to be let back into the F-35 program for Turkish industry and to be able to buy F-16s and have all the sanctions lifted. That price is nothing. I've heard as much as they want $100 billion to stabilize their foreign currency reserves after the West fucking stole them from them. But I'll be honest, and Erdogan is using the virtue signaling about Sweden and Finland both being harbingers of people he considers terrorists. And, that's just the way it is. And I'm sure that the Russians on the other side are making offers to Erdogan as well, saying, hey, man, what do we need to do? But the reality is that Erdogan has control over the Bosphorus, has the second largest military in NATO. And, oh, by the way, in case anybody's not confused about this, most of NATO's tanks are in Greece. Why? Because the Turks are on the other side, have control of the European side of the Bosphorus and Dardanelles. It's where the Greeks are armed to the freaking teeth because they're worried about an invasion from the Turks. Nominally a member of NATO. So I say this over and over and over again. Like, this is the way, this is the insanity of this entire process. So now, when you think about it, I don't know that Turkey is not going to fold here, but I can tell you that the future of NATO hangs in the balance, right? Because if Turkey is able to put the actual kibosh on Finland and Sweden's accession into NATO, it will start to splinter the organization. And maybe that's ultimately what Davos wants here. Davos wants NATO to go away. Davos wants an independent European foreign policy. I said this before the war. I said the goal here is to split Europe in a Europe security architecture away from the United States. We've watched the Russians wage war in eastern Ukraine, and it's clear that they have no design, nay, really even ability to invade Europe. Who are they going to invade? Finland? Maybe. They can barely invade Ukraine if you want to, really think about it. I mean, if you want to be really cynical about it, well, they can barely invade fucking Ukraine, for Christ's sake. How in the hell are they going to invade Finland with their 1 million-man army? Right? It's not like Finland's not been getting Western weapons all this time. So if, the thing that just popped into my head as I was doing this, I'm like, well, it's been really kind of preying on my head. Like, why would Davos be okay with this? Well, they would be okay with it if it would provoke a response that would set NATO against itself and then force a kind of stasis where NATO is set to fighting amongst themselves because they can't bring in new members. Turkey then completely, screws the plans up, the US's and the UK's plans up to start World War III in Ukraine, and everything and the whole game board changes in the next couple of weeks. Or that's just one scenario. I'm not saying it's the most likely scenario. I'm saying it's one possible scenario. Then the next side of the scenario, and we're going to be cutting this off in about 2 minutes, and I'm going to move over to Odyssey. So the other scenario, of course, is that Turkey is going to get their gibs. They're going to get their needs met. They're going to force Finland and Sweden to stop accepting Kurdish terrorists in their mind, PKK and PKD, or YPG and PKK. I don't I don't remember all the two groups that Erdogan announced in his speech about this, to stop accepting those people as refugees and send them back to Turkey so that he can prosecute them. And if the Finns and the Swedes are going to stand on are going to virtue signal that they're not going to do that, well, then they don't get to be a part of NATO. And if the United States is going to continue to, abuse one of its NATO members, and again, think this through. It's not like Putin couldn't see this coming. Like, it's not like this isn't a move you couldn't have put on the chessboard. At some point, you're going to force Turkey to make a decision. At some point, you're going to force the Germans to make a decision. Do you want energy, or do you want crazy green neocons who want to destroy Russia? Your choice, folks. Look up from your Shiza video, your Shiza porn for a couple of minutes and make a fucking decision. All right, I'm out. I'm going to be back in about 5 minutes, maybe 2 to 3 minutes over on Odyssey. Hope you enjoyed it. If you like what you heard tonight, give the like, do the subscribe. I only do this shit once a week. I don't really care. 15 minutes a week on YouTube. That's all I'm willing to give Google anymore. So there it is. You can follow my work at my blog at tomluongo.me. All the links are down below. You guys know the drill. You guys take care. You be well. We'll talk soon. We'll talk in 5 minutes on Odyssey.